You heard of Randall Tex Cobb? He was a heavyweight boxer. He fought Larry Holmes back in the day. In fact, when he fought Larry Holmes, he took such a beating that Howard Cosell quit commentating because of the beating Randall took. The big part about it was just Tex refused to go down. He's that scary a warrior. I remember him telling me, he said, Rich, he said, let me tell you something. Listen to me with my Texas accent, by the way. Rich, let me tell you something. He said, there's no such thing as a badass. I tried to find them. He literally went to boxing schools and karate schools around the states trying to find what he thought was the biggest badass just to test them out. And that's an actual story that he went to a lot of places just wanting to test himself out. A friend of his told me that Randall got hit in the head with a baseball bat in a fight once, and Randall's response to the guy was, I appreciate the attitude. He was complimenting for his attitude, hitting him in the head with a baseball bat, and proceeded to do away with the guy.
Didn't he even seek out the legendary Frank Dux? Because of course, Frank Dux was known the world over for the world Kumite champion, having, because Bloodsport said so, for example. So
It's the stuff martial arts films are made of. Comic book heroes with supernatural abilities. But the most unbelievable part of Bloodsport is that it really happened. Meet Frank Dux, the first American to win the Kumite.
Well, you're getting into touchy territory now, David.
Oh, this is a good one.
His ninja training played a key role.
It's just kind of funny because Randall did front Frank. He told me, went to the school and basically fronted him, and they ended up just talking things out, because it's just an example of when you put yourself out there in the market as the toughest, there's always somebody that's going to take you up on that. And you may have to then actually sort of prove that for real. So
I'm not the type of guy who kisses and tells, and I took an oath, and I plan on obeying that oath.
yeah.
yeah, that could be dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, this is why for me, I know this because I've trained with the best under them, as in Benny the Jet, as in Gene LaBelle, as in the Machados, as in Hickson Gracie. Man, you just suddenly realize your place in the martial arts world. That's why I know, no, I'm not a world beater. I'm a student, and I love that. I think I'm good at what I do, but the way to know where you're at is just train with the very best. That will be the indicator. That's when you'll find out, rather than armchair expert the whole thing and theorize about how good somebody else is and that you could beat them. Figure out the way and go and visit, even go in as a student. And I think that's the way you'll get a big wake up call, as to where you stand in the pecking order of toughest guys in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Like, for example, I was supposed to have an exhibition match on September 28th against Sugar Shane Mosley.
Yeah, I
You
read
know,
that.
yeah, he's one of the greatest boxers. So I dislocated my shoulder. So, obviously that didn't work out for me. But I talked to him on the
That
phone.
little chestnut, David, the dislocated shoulder. Good move.
But I talked to him on the phone, not that long ago. Because again, like I've always said, like I'm not delusional. I've always said, look, this is my Mount Everest. It's the ultimate challenge. I want to push myself as hard as I can, and I want that experience. And so it's more like that.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was talking to him, and he said, David, trust me, you don't want to fight me. But then I explained, look, it's all about the experience, Shane. I respect the hell out of you. I know your level. I understand it. Just like when you're rolling around with the Gracies or the Machados, it's like, yeah, their level's so high, but it's still a cool experience. Just.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm not saying don't enter their environment, test yourself, but I'm saying, let's play together. I'm talking about when people will go into Black Belt magazine and, oh, I'll fight anyone to the death and I'm tougher than anybody. That's just talking shit in my mind.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
crazy.
mean? You can easily find any of these so-called people that you think you are better than and just go in, and it doesn't have to be public even. And you'll either find out you are good or not. You know what I mean? But I think it's I just think it's a bit of an embarrassment to martial arts and martial artists in general when people start talking smack in the public arena about how tough and everything. It's just the antithesis to what we like to teach about humility and loyalty and spirituality that we would should have as qualities of being a martial artist. And not just the martial, which is all the combatives, but the art, which is being a gentleman and understanding the other side of the combatives of the arts we teach, the mind, body, the spiritual. I think all of that's important. And I just think it's like earlier when we're talking about MMA, when it's like wrestlers, it's just showbiz. They're talking smack, they're trying to put bums on seats, but I just think it kind of gives an ugly side to the combative arts and especially martial arts. So I just think there's a better way of doing it, of finding out where you actually stand individually as a group in the martial arts environment.
Yeah, for sure. Let's cover a little more Frank Dukes because he was pretty instrumental in that area, especially if you were living in California. Did you ever train with him? Like, what kind of interactions have you ever had with him?
No, I don't know Frank well, but I do know Frank, and I was trying to remember when I first met Frank, and I don't actually remember, but I do know he had a school in the Valley, which I went and visited a couple of times, and I used to watch. I watched Frank. I didn't do the classes, but I watched him
Mhm.
teach some class, and I was very impressed. I thought he moved really well, and I really enjoyed what he was teaching. Um, so and I would run into Frank, and I believe we totally had mutual respect, and I know there's a lot of trash talk going on with Frank and Frank talking about other people and him talking about him, and that's what I mean. I just think there's no place for that, I don't believe, I wish people would just shut up and do what they do is basically what I'm saying. Um, but like I spent a bit of time. I was in the Philippines doing a movie. I can't remember which one it was. Would have been the '80s, late '80s, and Judy was with me, my wife. Anyway, I'm sitting in a restaurant, and this Conrad Puzon, who's a Filipino producer, came up. He knew of me. I wasn't doing a movie with him at that stage. I was doing one with a gentleman named Sirio Santiago. And he came up and wanted me to work in this movie that he was about to produce, which happened to be with Frank. And I remember saying, "Look, I can't. I'm already doing this movie." He ended up, as a result of that meeting, hiring my wife Judy as one of the leads in this film that was called Get the Terrorists. And so Judy ended up doing this movie with Frank. I was trying to get her to remember some, like any details, and then she's having a bit of trouble. She's got some pictures she can send you, by the way,
Oh, that'd be cool.
in this movie. So she did that, and I used to run into Frank, in LA at times. But yeah, again, not a lot else that I remember about it all. It's And Frank's a big guy, for instance, he's tall, he's quite powerful. Do I know about all these stories about, Professor Tanaka and who he trained with and Bloodsport and all of that? Obviously, like everybody else, I know that Bloodsport is believed to be on Frank's experiences in Hong Kong with these so-called death matches or whatever, or the Kumite.
A lot of people liken it to a human cockfight. You've got to understand that Asia is lined with one secret society after another. And that's probably why the event has been kept secret for so long.
Don't know a lot of history about that. I've often said, and that's another time, Benny has stories of competing in Hong Kong.
I have the fur jacket, I have the money, I have my suitcase, and I still have the shirt with the blood on it.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, what the heck just happened?
I got one of those stories
me-
on the channel. Yeah, amazing story that his Kumite.
Yeah. And Benny would argue that really Bloodsport's about his experiences, but I don't know.
Interesting.
I mean, why would I disbelieve Frank's stories about competing in Kumite? I have no clue. It's absolutely possible, but I just don't know anything about that. As I said, I have a good relationship with Frank, so I have no issues with all of that, and rather just not get involved in that whole mess. But
Yeah, the big debate. Even our mutual friend Bay Logan had told me and talked about, and I put it on the channel, his kind of pseudo Kumite match that he had in Hong Kong.
The Kumite, as depicted in the film, used to really happen in Hong Kong. And anybody who says it didn't just doesn't know Chinese martial culture, does not have experience, and doesn't know the right people. And I had one similar experience, but not in Hong Kong, in Taiwan. I was there with Donnie Yen.
So there's something to those Kumite matches, whether Frank was involved or not. I mean, Benny was involved. Bay Logan kind of had a pseudo Kumite match.
did he? I didn't even know that Bay had.
I got to send you the link to that video. That's actually a really popular video that I put out maybe a year or two ago when he shared that story.
Yeah, don't know. It's yeah, obviously a lot. There's underground matches. Look at bare knuckle boxing. There's all that shit's been going on forever in different countries. Anyway, so why would it not be happening in Hong Kong? You've obviously another time talking about people like William Chung and Bruce Lee having street fights on rooftops. Wing Chun being another Wing Chun practitioner. I mean, I think there was always that testing of one's art, in different street encounters, but wasn't a part of that. Don't know.
Yeah. Let's talk about Steven Skull, because you first met him like before he ever did any movies or anything. Like you met him in Japan, right?